you.
Thank you. Well. So, let's just hope this works. That's not very good, is it? What is it? Who's in charge of this?
Yeah, okay.
See, it's not me.
Oh, there I am. I'm there, that one. I was trying to get to it. So actually, I had an interesting fact about an hour ago, which is, I didn't know this, did everyone know this? That Hillary Clinton became the 7th out of 8 candidates to try to win again for her party after 2 terms of her party to fail. So it's actually George Bush the elder is the only person who has managed to defy the fact that if you come after 2 terms of someone from your party, you'll lose. Quite interesting, isn't it? I'll also share with you, you've probably heard this, but I only heard it yesterday, which means I'm behind the times, but for me the best summary of the Trump victory was that lovely line which says that his supporters took him seriously but not literally, while his opponents took him literally but not seriously. I thought, that's it, really. That's all you really need to know. So when I talk about evidence, I'm going to talk about, what I'm talking about really is the use of social facts in the context of decision making. So I'm not talking about scientific facts, I'm not talking about experiments of that kind, I'm talking about the use of social facts. In policy making, I define policy making very broadly. I don't just mean government policy making, I mean policy making within organisations. So making policies, facts about people to influence decisions about people, if you want. And I'm going to offer you a framework which some of you will have heard about in other contexts, but it's kind of my take on it. I normally take about 25 minutes to do this talk, and people at the end of it said, I wish you had a bit more time and hadn't compressed so much, and I've got 10 minutes now, so it's going to be really quick. So anyway, I'm going to suggest to you that the way I'm going to offer you a way of thinking about the context in which we understand social facts and we use them for policy making, and that is a theory of the world, an incredibly simple theory of the world, which I happen to believe is kind of true, well, useful, let's not say true, but let's say useful. And that theory of the world says that the world is understood, social world is understood through 4 ways of thinking, ways of seeing, ways of acting, forms of power, they're all those things. So there are 4 kind of basic fundamental paradigms. They reflect our past, our psychological makeup, our evolutionary development. And you can't really understand anything unless you understand the ways in which these 4 ways of thinking influence everything that we see. And so the first way is hierarchy. So this is a way of seeing the world which is fundamentally about authority, rules, regulation, strategy, policy, bureaucracy, all that kind of stuff. It's a view of the world that says that what matters, what makes the world change is authority in one way or another. That's what matters. The second view is this, solidarity, which is a view that what really matters in the world is belonging and shared values and membership and our tribe and some notion of social justice. People think this is a left-wing idea, but it's also the kind of driving force behind kind of racism and tribalism of various kinds. But it's, it's what we have in common. So hierarchy is about our kind of structure. Solidarity is about what we have in common. Individualism is the third way of thinking, which says no, what really matters, or the best way to make change happen is to maximise the scope for people to to pursue their own interests. So that's all about markets and enterprise and innovation and risk and competition and all that kind of stuff. And then the fourth way of thinking is this. It's my favourite one really, which is that basically it doesn't really matter what we do, we're all screwed. And anyway, even if we solve all our problems, we're all still going to die. And when I read that, people think that's a bit weird. And then I kind of say to them, well, if you agree that philosophers are the cleverest people in the world, the slightly worrying thing is that most philosophers are fatalists. Okay, in one way or another. Now, quick evidence for that before I get on to the meat of my talk, and I've got 4.5 minutes left. I'm just going to give you a couple of reasons why that might be. I've just plucked that from, it reflects the work of Mary Douglas and a huge number of other people. It's got quite deep roots, I haven't just thought it up today, but a couple of things recently which have intrigued me. Centre for Public Impact, which was set up by the Boston Consulting Group. They did a massive meta-study of what works in terms of public impact, and they said what works is got these three elements, and I thought that's quite interesting because they map onto the three that I talk about all the time. So policy is a hierarchical bit, the policy's got to be good. Legitimacy is the solidarity bit, it's got to kind of go with the grain of people's values, and action is the kind of individualism bit, it's got to go with the grain of people's actual behaviours and incentives. So it's quite interesting to me that they independently, through a massive piece of research, much bigger than I could possibly afford, came up with a pretty similar conclusion. The other one is, I can't go into this, I've got time, but London Challenge, which is one of the most successful policies in the last 30 years. When you look at London Challenge, what's really interesting about it is it basically had a kind of hierarchical element. It was led by civil servants in the department, lots of data, lots of strategy. It had a values-based element, which was all about closing the social attainment gap in London, and it had this strong individualistic element because Andrew Adonis designed it, so there was kind of academies and superheads and all this. So it's like if you constructed a policy on the basis of the principles I've described, you would have constructed that because it managed to bring the three active things, hierarchy, vision, and solidarity together. I haven't got time to explain to you that I'm right, but I'm right. This is what I'm going to spend the last 4 minutes doing. So this is a summary of what I'm going to go into. So what I want to argue with you, what I want to suggest to you is this: when you're presenting social facts in the context of influencing decisions, a good way of thinking about it is how people looking through these four lenses, and by the way, at different points in your life, some people have predispositions, but you will be these things at different times in your life. And I'm a hierarchist here because I run the place. And I'm a fatalist on Saturday afternoons because I support West Bromwich Albion. So we are at different things at different times. But in any given organisational setting, people will adopt one of these ways of thinking. And whenever there's a complex issue, you will always hear these four voices. So one way of thinking about this question is, how do each of these ways of thinking look on evidence? What do they like about evidence? And what do they not like about evidence? And that might influence if you then take evidence into social facts, into a decision-making environment, I would suggest to you that you will, if you listen hard enough, you will hear the positives and negatives being expressed from each of these four perspectives. So very quickly, and I've only got 4 slides left. So if you're in the hierarchy, why do you like evidence? Well, you really like evidence, and evidence is primarily a hierarchical tool, by the way. I mean, evidence and hierarchy do go together. So it kind of reinforces notions of expertise and strategy, and why we need leaders, and why we have experts, and why we have, so that's all fine. And also legitimacy. The hierarchies get their legitimacy by saying we are the people who understand stuff. We know stuff, that's why we're in charge, okay? Why do people in hierarchy not always like evidence? And I know this from advising prime ministers and ministers. They don't like it when it's a bit complicated. I'm not sure about that. If it overcomplicates things, I used to advise Tony Blair, and he didn't really like too much evidence. The only time I ever heard Tony say was wrong was when he once said he should have listened to himself earlier. So they don't like it, but of course they don't like being challenged. Also, they don't like it when the facts contradicts the strategy which they've set out. That's not great either. So that's pretty obvious. That's the most obvious side. Overall evidence is a hierarchical thing, so the positives outweigh the negatives, generally speaking here. Individualism. So, individualists, well, why do they like evidence? They like evidence because they can think it's good as a basis for innovation. If you've got evidence, this is a tool you can use to do stuff, so big data. Big data has been an interesting thing, because big data has been individualism liking data, which they never were really sure about in the past. But big data, we use big data, we can make things with it. So they like that. And also, individualists might like data because it gives you metrics for competition. It enables you to have a way of measuring performance, because individualists are highly competitive. So if you want to get schools to compete with each other, first of all, you've got to have a league table. To have a league table, you've got to have data. So individualists might like evidence who does that. And you'll see, by the way, that the same negatives appear in different places, which is why you'll sometimes get alliances between different people in the face of evidence, because there are similar concerns, but they're slightly different. Individualists don't like evidence that overcomplicates things. I just want to get on with stuff. So I'm a sociologist, and so I try to make things as complicated as possible. I'm sure you've heard the old joke, what do you get when you cross a sociologist, a member of the mafia? And the answer is someone who makes you an offer you can't understand. I'm always talking to kind of people who, men of action, and I'm saying, well, it's all a bit more complicated than that. No, okay, let's go on with it. And also, that individualists are very future-oriented. And they will also sometimes say about evidence, you're exaggerating what you know. Actually, you don't know. If we really showed some innovation, we did things differently, my great idea, I know it's always gone wrong in the past, but I can make it work. So individualists always want to say that evidence is all fine, but it's dead evidence. It's all dead. The future is for us to make, so that's their kind of take on it. Solidarity. So if you're coming from a solidaristic perspective, that's the perspective about values and belonging and all that kind of stuff, that kind of heart stuff, if you like, culture and things. Well, you like it if it's the truth, because, in solidarity, the solidaristic perspective is very concerned about kind of authenticity and all that. So, evidence is good because it makes us honest. We're honest to the evidence. That's a strong way you can say. You can say to people who use the evidence because it'll make you be truthful. And also, evidence can mobilise people. If solidaristic people are kind of wanting to change the world, generally speaking, the world doesn't align with their values, and evidence can enable you to mobilise people. The negatives, I would say, from the solidaristic perspective, they're the ones who tend to be most sceptical about evidence, generally speaking, because first of all, they'll say all evidence is ideological. So if you look from a solidaristic perspective, where your membership, your belonging, your tribe is important to you, you look at evidence and you think, yeah, but whose evidence is this? Where's it coming from? So there's a kind of natural question about the notion of objective social facts. Well, whose objective social facts? And also, the other thing from a solidaristic perspective, they'll say, well, facts they're not sufficiently moral. So a great example of this is when the government rejects facts about drugs, or they reject facts about prison recidivism. They might say, well, I don't care whether the facts demonstrate that smoking marijuana doesn't make you a heroin addict. I don't care if the facts say that you should actually let prisoners out and be really soft on them in prison. I don't care, it's not moral. So don't give me facts that lead me to conclusions that I don't think are moral. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to accept that. So you come across that. And then finally, fatalism. So there'll be people in the room, you're giving evidence, and like in the room I was in today, there's lots of civil servants, and some of them are kind of bouncy and tiggerish, and some of them look as though they've been civil servants for a very long time. And so the fatalists in the room, the ones thinking, who's this? It's another bloody attempt to. They're the ones who will say, well, I like evidence because it forces people to be realistic. It forces people. I got a lot of that today in my meeting. Here am I, they're coming along with my big solution, and they say, no, let's just tell you how many times people have tried to do this and they got it wrong, and the fact. And also, and similarly about humility. So fatalists like evidence because it helps people be more humble about what's possible. The negatives from a fatalistic perspective is they might say the problem with evidence is it kind of assumes no ability. Actually the world it's irreducibly complex and horrible, and your evidence suggests a false capacity to know what's going to happen. But also, this is a new one, I think, also is this kind of notion of, I like this idea of solutionism. The danger with evidence is it kind of provokes you to think there must be a solution, because if you can describe, the more problems you can describe, the more there's a danger to assume that you can solve every problem, and therefore you get into this kind of solutionist mindset that we now we can discover things, we know things are wrong, so therefore we're going to solve them. I was going to talk about Brexit and evidence as a tool of the elite, but I think that's a classic example. Here's my final slide. It's a classic example of where really the way that the Brexit evidence worked is it very much worked from a kind of hierarchical perspective, and it was from a solidaristic perspective perceived as being highly ideological. It was just there to serve the elite. And also, I would say it failed the individualism test. Finally, I'll show up with this. It kind of failed the test of. In the end, the argument for staying in the European Union didn't give people any sense of agency. There was no sense of what they were going to do with any of this. It was just kind of big bloody numbers given to you by people in authority that you couldn't really do much with. So, in summary, therefore, what I'm saying to you is that when we try to work out why it is that social facts don't always influence policy decisions in the way that we might want to, that's because you're almost certainly dealing with people who have a certain mindset in relation to that. And the more that you can present your evidence in a way which speaks to the positives of those charts I put forward and tries to avoid some of the negatives, the more likely it is that evidence will be taken seriously. Thank you.